A bloodied K9 German shepherd storms into a police station. An unconscious little girl tied to his back. Chaos erupts. Officers froze. But before anyone can react, the dog bolts, barking desperately for someone to follow. Where he leads uncovers a shocking truth. What the dog did next left everyone stunned. It was a quiet afternoon at the city precinct. Just paperwork, radio, chatter, and the occasional ringing. Phone. The glass doors of the police station suddenly swung open with a loud thud, and in limped a massive German shepherd, bleeding, panting, one eye swollen shut. But it wasn't just a dog. That made everyone freeze. Draped across his back, barely conscious and clutching to his fur, was a little girl in a torn, pink dress. Her legs scraped her arms, trembling. Officers jumped from their desks. One shouted for a medic. Another reached for his radio. The dog didn't flinch, didn't bark. He only kept walking forward, eyes scanning the room, heading straight toward the nearest officer like he knew exactly where to go. No leash, no handler, just a wounded K9 and a child in distress. Whatever had happened out there, it was far from over. Chaos erupted inside the station as officers rushed to respond. The little girl was carefully lifted from the dog's back and placed on a blanket. Her skin was cold, her breathing shallow, and she had dried blood on her legs. A dispatcher called for emergency medical support while two officers knelt beside her, checking for signs of trauma. But what caught everyone off guard was the dog's reaction. The German shepherd growled low when anyone got too close to the girl. His body trembled with exhaustion, yet he stood guard-like, a soldier protecting his last mission. Easy, boy. We're here to help, one officer said, gently reaching for him. The K9 didn't move away, but his eyes never left the girl. One officer scanned the microchip on the dog's vest. The results flashed on the screen, and jaws dropped. This wasn't a local unit's dog. He belonged to a missing officer from another state. The station fell into a tense hush as the identification came through. The K9's name was Titan, assigned to Officer Daniel Rains of the Pine River Police Department, nearly 200 m away. Officer Rains had been reported missing 4 days ago during a trafficking investigation, but Titan had vanished, with him presumed dead or lost in the wilderness. Yet here he was, bruised, battered, and somehow alive, dragging a child to safety. Meanwhile, the little girl's photo was run through the missing persons database. A match came back almost instantly. Emily Carter, age 6, abducted 3 days ago just outside a grocery store in a nearby county. Her disappearance had triggered a regional Amber Alert. No leads had turned up until now. Everyone in the room stared at Titan in stunned silence. How had he traveled this far alone? Where was Officer Rains? Had Titan rescued Emily from wherever she was being held? The questions came fast in panic, but Titan couldn't answer them. He simply laid down beside the girl, his breathing heavy, eyes fixed on her face. For now, the only thing that mattered was that she was alive and Titan had brought her home. Hours passed and finally the little girl stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open and she blinked against the hospital lights. An officer gently knelt beside her bed. "Emily," he said softly, "you're safe now. Can you tell us anything?" Her lips trembled as she whispered a single word, "Blackstone." Then after a pause, she added, "Red, building cages." Her voice cracked, but it was enough. Officers immediately took note. Blackstone was the name of a remote industrial district on the outskirts of town. Meanwhile, Titan had been brought to a veterinary unit for treatment, but he resisted sedation. Every time someone said the name, Blackstone, his ears twitched and his eyes narrowed. It was as if he recognized it. When a suspect's photo was shown to him, an ex-military contractor named Alan Brooks tightened bared his teeth and let out a deep warning growl. The medical team treating Emily confirmed something more chilling. Her wrists bore clear signs of having been restrained with zip ties, and her ankles were bruised. Someone had held her captive recently. Titan had fought his way out with her, and now, with every low growl and subtle reaction, he was pointing law enforcement toward the people still out there and the danger they hadn't yet uncovered. The moment Emily's statement was matched with the name Alan Brooks and the location, Blackstone, alarms went off at the federal level. Brooks wasn't just an ex-military contractor. He was already on the FBI's radar for suspected involvement in a human trafficking network spanning multiple states. The fact that his name had come from the mouth of a rescued child sent shock waves through the agency. Within hours, federal agents arrived at the local precinct, taking over the investigation. Emily remained in fragile condition, barely speaking, but her words held enough weight to start a multi-agency operation. Her brief descriptions matched details from prior reports: metal doors, padlocks, a red building, cameras. The feds believed they were close to exposing a trafficking hub that had evaded detection for years. Titan was brought in again, now under close observation, when a photo of the Blackstone district was laid out on the table. The K-9 stood up and began barking, repeatedly placing his paw on one particular warehouse image. It was eerie, like he remembered the place. The agents exchanged glances between the child's fragile memory and the dog's uncanny responses. They had what they needed, enough cause to move, and they would move fast. The command center buzzed with quiet intensity as federal agents, local police, and tactical teams gathered around the map. The warehouse Titan had pointed to was located at the far end of Blackstone Industrial Park, abandoned on paper, but recently leased to a fake shipping company. Satellite images showed new vehicles coming and going, and drone footage picked up unusual heat signatures. Something was inside, and they didn't have time to wait. Emily, still weak but lucid, was shown a simplified layout of the area. Her fingers hesitated, then pointed to the same building Titan had identified. The red door, she whispered. That's where they kept us. Officers were stunned. A child and a dog had just zeroed in on the same location, independently. That was no coincidence. The raid was scheduled for just before dawn. Officers rehearsed entry points, planned silent takedowns, and assigned medical teams. One agent requested Titan be brought along if he was up for it. The vet cleared him under supervision. As the sun crept toward the horizon, armored vans lined up in silence. No sirens, no warnings, just a single goal: get in, find the missing, and bring them out. Whatever was behind those red doors, they were ready for it. The sun had barely touched the horizon when black bands rolled into position. Armed officers in tactical gear fanned out, silently covering exits and side paths. Titan stood beside his handler, patched up but alert, his tail stiff, his breath measured. He wasn't just a survivor now. He was leading them back into the storm. At 5:43 a.m., the signal came. Go. They breached the red doors with thundering crash. Shouts echoed, boots pounded concrete, and beams of light cut through the dark interior. The warehouse was far from empty. Inside were cages, real cages lining the walls. Some were empty. Others held frightened children, blinking at the sudden flood of light. Officers moved quickly, unlocking restraints, wrapping kids in blankets, whispering, "You're safe now." But the horror didn't end there. Deeper in the building, Titan pulled hard against his leash, leading officers to a back room, hidden behind steel shelving. When they broke in, they found a lock case of fake passports, burner phones, and stacks of unregistered firearms. On the wall were surveillance photos, images of children taken from playgrounds, parking lots, school entrances, and standing in the corner, frozen, was Alan Brooks. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He simply raised his hands as Titan growled low, lips curled, eyes locked on the man who had haunted that little girl's memories. They had him, and thanks to a wounded dog and a terrified child, the nightmare was finally exposed. The raid wasn't just successful. It cracked a trafficking ring wide open. In the days that followed, the headlines exploded. Federal raid uncovers child trafficking. Network, K9 and Kid lead the way. Dozens of officers received commendations, but all eyes were on Titan. He became a national hero. Emily, once silent and terrified, began to speak again, especially when Titan was nearby. She would smile faintly, whispering,